And they did this thing called hypergrowth.
That is China. I think China is a great example of indefinite pessimism. Microsoft and Google, each of them had a greater market cap in this OS ecosystem than Apple did.
All right, so we are back with another episode, guys. So this week we did something interesting. We both decided to read a book. Okay, one, because we want to encourage that behavior in us to read like a book a month, and second, now we're going to give our feedback on and our thoughts about this book. And the book of the month is 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, which is just a great book. So I've been like thinking about this book, thinking to read this book for like quite some time, and we finally got a chance. Just to give you a little overview of who Peter Thiel is, he is the founder of PayPal. Okay, he's also the founder of Palantir. Sorry, what's it called?
Palantir. Yeah.
Palantir. Yeah, Palantir. And he also has a fund called the Founder Fund. Okay, he's been one of the first investors in Facebook, SpaceX, Tesla, and he has even acquired X.com. So he's been everywhere. He's an absolute legend in the startup space, and this book really like expands your mind. Like, you know, what you thought startups were, it isn't. Like, you know, he gives a different perspective as to how you would go about growing a startup. Okay, what's up? What do you think? Did I get the gist of it all?
Yeah, dude, like the fact that you hesitated to describe what this book is kind of shows the volume of content that is out there in the book. It's very hard to encapsulate it in a few words, and hence you have to read the book, right? But I think the central idea of this book is that a lot of startups that are currently there today, existing in the market today, are driven with by certain norms and principles that he perceives them to be outdated. He thinks that startups take the current norms out of context, and hence in this book he brings out these contrary opinions, and he brings out this contradicting viewpoints on how startups have to be managed and how startups have to be built. And of course, like you gave his introduction, his kind of resume says that he speaks out of experience, right? He comes from a place where he knows what he's talking about. So yeah, it was an interesting read, honestly.
Absolutely. And throughout the book, he keeps giving a place where he was, and he was doing the thing that he said like do not do throughout the book. So it's really cool when he brings his own personal experience into play. And more than anything, although the book says 0 to 1, I think this is a guide as to how you can build a multi-billion-dollar business, more than your normal like couple $1 million business that you're running on the side. No, this is like how you can revolutionize, or how you can come up with a business idea that could impact the world. So yeah, that's great. I'd like to start off with this one quote. It's right there in the start of the book, and I think this is brilliant. Brilliant thinking is rare, but courage is in even shorter supply than genius. Oh, I just love it. It just gave me like goosebumps.
How do you interpret it? Like what part of it do you think makes you resonate with it as much?
The one thing that he keeps bringing on is don't compete. Competition is for losers. Create monopolies. Monopolies is good, and we have been taught the opposite. We just think, oh no, monopolies are terrible because the government will come and seize our company and take it off, like what happened with Air India back in the day, right? But he gives such a great example, and so let's just dive in at this point in the monopolies aspect of it. So monopolies hate to admit that they're monopolies, because if they do, the government will interject and probably seize the company and so forth. So monopolies say that we're in a huge market versus non-monopolies say that they're in a small market. and there's this Venn diagram that he has built. So let's give like three examples. Um, you are, I think Google is an example that he gave over there, and Google's search is pretty much, I think right now it's at 90% of the market cap. In the book, like, obviously this is an older book, so he said 66%, which is still the lion's share of the market share. So if Google says that, oh yeah, we're a search engine company, they're pretty much screwed. But if they say that they are an advertising company, okay, so the US search advertising is only $17 billion, and then US online advertising is $32 billion market cap. US advertising as a whole is $150 billion market cap. So they're just a small, tiny, like, company compared to this massive market. So yeah, so Google now is not just into search, they're into mobiles, they're into I think social media in the middle. They're doing all these bunch of things. I think self-driving cars as well. So they're just this small, tiny company in this combined market.
Right.
So they're technically not a monopoly. So I just really like that aspect of it, or like that way of looking at the company.
Right. Dude, I think that the whole book is based on the premise of going from 0 to 1. Like, the name of the book itself is 0 to 1. What it really implies is that he's kind of alluding companies and startups and founders to go from nothing to having something, right? And he believes, and that is the 0 to 1. So he, in his words, 0 to 1 is this vertical progress, and 1 to n is a horizontal progress, right? Any company that is completely new, or it creates a product or a service that caters to a totally new market, goes from 0 to 1, right? And such are the kind of companies that truly disrupt. And to your point, when Google when Google started the search engine, right, like, it had that formula that made it monopolize the to monopolize the market, right? And that is where it is going from 0 to 1, right? It had that. It had this excellent search algorithm that was giving you results better than any other competitor out there in the market. I think back then it was maybe Bing was there, and Yahoo was there at like early 2000s. So those were the competitors, serious competitors, and but Google was serving you results so much more better, giving you results so much more better. So the idea here that he's trying to drive is that you've got to monopolize, right? And like you mentioned, against conventional norms. One of the conventional norms is that, hey, competition is good. You need to be in this competitive ecosystem to thrive. But then he draws this extremely intriguing comparison between capitalism and competition, and then he says that these are two contradicting aspects. These are two fundamentally different concepts, and they cannot coexist in the same ecosystem, in the same economic ecosystem, right? And because you have more competition, that naturally drives your profits down, and then you will reach that equilibrium, that final state where nobody is making a lot of money. Like, none of the players in that competitive market is making a lot of money. However, on the flip side, if you monopolize, and if you are one of those companies that dominates the market, then you get to set the price point, and basically you get to reap out all the profits, right? A great example of this is like the mobile phone industry that's there today, right? Like, look at like all of your China-made phones and companies, Oppo, Vivo, OnePlus, and then you have your Redmi, Realme. It's just like a plethora of them, and because of that such intense competition, you drive your individual profits down. It's like you're killing yourself. It's like a slow time bomb that you've set into the market to, kill your own company.
But technically, majority of those companies are just under one company. So they have given the illusion of competition, but they have monopolized.
Yeah.
Now I do not know the financials of the main parent company, but I guess that's like, this is another way, like, to the government. No, we are not a monopoly. We are in serious competition. So they're taking like smaller pieces of the pie.
Yeah.
But like in all ranges.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing I like to circle back to is the horizontal progress versus the vertical progress. I found that amazingly fascinating.
Yeah.
And he said, let me define this. So, horizontal progress is, you would say, 1 to n, right? So, basically, copying things that work. The example he gave is, um, you have one typewriter and you build 100 other typewriters, and you, like, sell it to not just the US market, the whole global market. And he literally called globalization a horizontal progress, versus the vertical progress is where you have achieved something wholly new. So you have taken a typewriter and actually built a word processor or something. So that's where there is a technological advancement. And he said this: globalization and technology are two different kinds of progress. Globalization without advances in technology would devastate the planet. And
Yeah.
if you remember in the first chapter, he gave an example of India. He said if majority of the Indian household uh, were to have the same kind of privileges and same kind of like technology as your median home in America, the world would be like devastated. The environmental damage that would be there, that would be horrific. So that's why you need technological development over globalization. So globalization is just a horizontal progress. So that just blew my mind. I
Yeah.
have, like, since I was 16, I'm like, globalization for the win. Like, let's go. This
Yeah.
just blew my mind. This just changed the way I look at globalization now.
Yeah, dude. Honestly, this is again one of the like beliefs, like common beliefs that he busts, right? And then he gives this extremely well thought of reasoning as to why we should prefer technology over globalization, and why globalization can is good only when there is technological advancements happening, right?
Right.
And if we were to just have automated self-driving cars in India, it would be a catastrophe, right? Like there would just not be enough resources or enough infrastructure. There isn't enough infrastructure to support that level of technology,
As of
right?
yet.
As of yet, right? So yeah, that's definitely it. So one of the interesting things that he kind of emphasizes on, which I truly resonated with, is the fact that he encourages people to start small. Right? He says that you go, if as a startup, if you're going to build a product that caters to a very large market, let's say it's a multi-million or a multi-billion dollar market, then he just says that that's not the way to go. And it's actually right. I mean, it's easy to think that they build a startup in like cloud computing space, or let's say like a SaaS product, right, to cater to, like, let's say some kind of a supply chain problem, or to address some kind of a database issue, right? But then there are 50 other players in the same market, and then you are like the 51st person into the market, right?
Yeah.
And there are bigger and better companies that have more resources and more ability to outperform or outstrip the product that you're trying to build, right, with their firepower that they have, right? So you basically are a fish in the pond if you attempt to go to a multi-billion dollar market. What he rather encourages people to think of is to create new markets. Is to create or to tap market that is almost untapped, right? Like it's
Yeah.
almost a zero market that never existed, and your product basically creates that market, right? A great example for this is fingerprint unlocking on your phones. Imagine, like, so we had phones all the way through 2000s and like early 2010s as well, right? Smartphones were there, and we also had legacy phones, right? And fingerprint technology was available.
Yeah.
It was not that this technology came up in only after mid 2010s, right? But the till the first player in the market introduced the fingerprint sensor on the phones, it was just non-existent. Nobody even wanted it. That market was not existing at all, right? But then the moment a good fingerprint sensor was put on Apple's, I think it was one of the Apple phones, I think it was
Yeah.
5 or 6, the moment that was put in, everybody wanted a fingerprint sensor on their phones. And today you cannot imagine a phone that does not have a fingerprint sensor, right? Like even like a 5,000, 10,000 rupee phone will also have a good fingerprint sensor that opens within like seconds, right? So that market never existed, right? Like in early 2000s and 2000 mid 2010s. But then now there is such a huge demand for it, and like if now you have that optical fingerprint sensing, all kinds of like one-to-end transformations are happening there in that domain, right? So that's the idea, right? You got to like either start small, and you have to start small. You got to either create a completely new market or go to a market that exists but then is untapped, right? And then the moment you establish yourself there, then you slowly like start expanding to like adjacent markets, and you start like conquering, like once you have built a strong foothold and you have a solid foundation in one of your markets, then you slowly start expanding.
Yeah, and one of the best examples of this is also Amazon. Okay, and how Amazon went. So Amazon started off as a bookstore, an online bookstore. You can get whichever book you wanted. So they tapped a very small market. Okay, which is and they didn't have any inventory. Okay, they just had suppliers. So people would just they just added the whole entire database of books on their website, and whoever wanted whichever book they wanted, they would get, and they would just like get the supplier there. And once they got a product market fit, they had a choice to make. They were like, okay, should we just do books for the rest of our lives? No. Okay, they were like, okay, let's do similar things. Okay, so they went into CDs, they went into software, they went into, I think, music even.
Yep.
And that's how. So they started off as a marketplace for books, and now they're a marketplace for everything. And that's brilliant. And you were also mentioning that Peter Thiel said, don't go capture 1% of $100 billion market, right? He said that is the biggest red flag that you can find, and you can see with his investments as well that he has put like these thoughts through, and he has only invested in companies which were creating a new market, or were like targeting an untapped space.
The other interesting thing that he brings up in the book is that technology is not IT, and like in today's world we have like somehow made them synonymous, right? But then information technology is a subset of like the bigger umbrella of technology, of what technology really is, right? Like if you look back in the 20th century, like this is like a really interesting thing that I was thinking about as to why this kind of radical change happened, right? And the idea is, if you look at 20th century, right, we had a lot of innovation in like various sectors of technology. We were able to create atomic bombs, right? And nuclear fission was discovered, right? Which meant that it like in the energy domain, we were able to like discover so many new things. Internet and PC was invented and discovered, right? Actually both of them were invented, but in the IT sector we had a huge boom there. We had airplanes and cars that were invented, which meant that in your transportation technology there was like a radical improvement that happened. Submarines and rockets were built, which meant that in your warfare technology you made like radical improvements. Antibiotics and DNA were invented in the 20th century, which meant that in your biotechnology space you had like a lot of improvement. So if you look at the entire technology spectrum, right, each one of them had their fair share of innovations that was coming through during the 20th century, right? But then now you look at 21st century, you will see that a lot of things are happening only in the IT sector. You have cloud computing, which was a great invention, but then it's in IT. You have blockchain, which is in IT. You have smartphones, which is a hardware for IT, right? You have your social media, which is again for IT, right? Like the volume of innovations that are happening in IT sector is significantly higher in the 21st century as opposed to any other form of technology, right? And the real question here is, why is that happening? Why is 21st century innovations just so centric around information technology and not any other form of technology, right? Like that's a really interesting question to think about. And like a few reasons come to my mind, right? Like the first justification to this could be circumstances, right? Like circumstances back in 20th century were completely different than they are today, right? Like what I mean by that is, let's say world wars, right? Like world wars led to these kind of new innovations and new, like they demanded scientists and academicians to come up with like all these out of the, they were forced to think out of the box, and they were forced to come up with
Products of mass destruction. Yeah.
yeah, mass destruction. Like you had to come up with like ability to mass mobilize your troops. You had to like communicate, right? Like there is this very interesting documentary on Netflix which is called World War II in color. Have you watched it?
Of course I have. It's beautiful.
Yeah, dude, in that there is this one, I don't remember which episode, but then they talk about how Germany developed this technology to be able to attack on London, on UK, in the night, right? So, and they had this kind of sonar technology to be able to like very precisely
Navigate through the defenses, right?
yeah, navigate through the defenses, exactly. So this kind of technology came up only because circumstances demanded it, right? Maybe like another example could be the battle for space, right? From 1950s onwards, there was this huge tussle going on between USSR and China and US, and it's about, you know, who can put it out there. Like, you know, in fact, the Apollo space mission program was it lasted for I think 12 years, okay, 1961 to 1972 or something, right? And in those 12 years they put 12 people on moon, and the first person to go on moon was in 1969. So for like a majority part of the Apollo program, nobody went to moon, but the moment the first person went to moon, like there were like 11 others who were able to go to the moon, right? So
But I really want to interject you here because there's a lot of cool facts. So what happened after that? After those 12 people, nobody got to the moon for like at least like 20, 30 years. And that's where Elon also came. And he's like, NASA's literally there. They couldn't even build a rocket in like early 2000s. Okay, when he started SpaceX. And NASA was actually using a Russian like rocket site to go and launch these. And a beautiful quote came out, and he said, technology just doesn't get better by itself automatically. Somebody has to go and put in the work. And the exact thing Peter Thiel said in his book, progress isn't a given. It doesn't happen automatically. Someone has to actually go there and put in the work. So yeah, go ahead. I'm just talking.
Absolutely right. So it was the circumstances maybe, and that's why like 20th century advancements were like much more diverse, so to speak, right? The second reason could be lesser investments. In fact, I was looking at this very interesting statistic which showed that the investment in 2021, I was not able to get it year on year. I tried very hard to look for the stat, but then investments in 2021 in the IT domain outperform like it the so like okay, let me try to frame it in this way. The total sum of investments that happened in every other technology sector, which included biotech, finance, your warfare tech, your communication, every other tech sector, the sum of all the investments that happened is lesser than the investments that were put in IT sector.
IT.
Right, so maybe it's just because there is no money for people to work in these other sectors, like to make CRISPR, for example, which is a biotechnological innovation. One of like gene editing is like it's like the newest thing in 21st century for biotech, right? Maybe to make gene editing much more accessible, like how we can access, let's say, our emails, requires a lot of investment, and just because there isn't enough investment coming through from the venture capitalists and angel investors and like other institutional investors, maybe there is no innovation that's going on there, right? Like that's probably another reason why we don't have innovation in other technological sectors. A more controversial opinion, honestly, could be that the opportunity and scalability costs of building an IT startup is much smaller when you compare to building it in any other sector, right? Like what I mean by that is, let's say I want to build an app that tracks that updates that monitors traffic real time in Bangalore. I can literally just open my PC and code it, and then boom, I'm ready to go. I have all the data that I can get from the internet, and all I have to do is like aggregate them in one place and then build an app and publish it out there, right? So the opportunity cost and starting scalability, the starting up cost is very small. However, if I want to going back to my example, if I want to make CRISPR like a more accessible technology, it's just impossible for me to do so. I cannot do it, right? Because it just involves so much of innovation, so much of cost that simply goes into this, that I'd rather do like entrepreneurs rather do startups in IT domain than they do in any other technological sector.
Yeah, and I definitely feel that you're onto something, because even in India, our education systems are not that great because of the one fact: the research, the R&D sector is not up to par. Which is why anyone that wants to do research, they go to US and they are doing it, because the institutes are being funded in those specific domains. At least they have the funds somewhat to do these things. They have the infrastructure and the whatever equipments that are there, and they kind of reward R&D and like PhD holders who actually do this kind of research. Whereas I think, come on, man, we have all put in our final papers in our university. You know how that goes. Even in engineering, come on, what was that? Okay, but the depth of it in these abroad colleges are insane. I had the good fortune of being in an IB school. So in that 11th and 12th, there's a subject called TOK, where you actually do this research document. Okay, and one of the kids, he did something around mathematics, and this is in 12th grade, by the way. Okay, and he came out with this whole new way of doing this certain kind of I don't know, some problem that there was, and it was recognized immediately. Like as soon as he submitted, they're like, oh my god, this is actually really cool, and he got like certain awards, and like now that is used as like a practice. So I'm so sorry, I don't know the exact details, but look at that. Like look at how just the syllabus, even though it was taught in India, okay, just because the way this curriculum is structured, they reward R&D, they reward you coming with original thought, they reward these kind of advancements. So that's what like India is missing as well, and I think that'll change.
I think it's a global problem, honestly. Limiting it to India is probably being very hard on India, I would say, because genuinely, if you think of it, like your grades reflect how well you can do a given task. It's not about how well can you, how much more did you learn, or it's so. Let's say like I am supposed to read Unit 1 to Unit 5 of a particular subject, and if I read it thoroughly and if I answer all the questions in the exam paper correctly, I get like an A plus or an S grade or whatever, right? On the flip side, let's say I read from Unit 1 to Unit 10, and then I'm not rewarded for reading the the rest chapters, the rest of the syllabus, right? So there is no incentive for me to go out of my way to do something that's not asked for. So, and we have been trained, we have been put into this regime from a very young age, right? So it's very hard for us to like break that barrier and actually like kind of think of what more can I do with what I have right now, right? Like, it's very hard for us to like get out of that frame of mind and like think in that perspective.
Where the education tangent could be an episode. I think we can do a deep dive on that. But coming back to it, you're absolutely right. Like Peter Thiel, like again, what you were saying is correct. Like you need to strive for these technological advancements in whichever area it is.
Right.
I think the biohacking space really needs like some kind of funding, because now people are way more conscious about their health, and day in day out we are finding out some of these products that we have been having for years are has carcinogens. Like there's a lot of cancer coming out. So that's something that I'm worried about, and I really think there's a massive space for clean organic. There's still we have been hearing the word organic, like I feel that we haven't got more into depth. So I feel that's a market that which is completely which is untapped at the moment.
Dude, but here's the thing, right? Here's my take on like another hindrance to technological advancements in today's ecosystem. The problem is that a lot of people have their say in what is right and what is wrong, and that's a big problem. Like that's a hindrance to advancements in technology, or like that's a hindrance to innovation. What I mean by that is, back in 1950s and 60s, nobody really questioned whether going to moon was a good thing or not, right? Like NASA just decided that, hey, we're going to go to the moon and that's it. But right now, think of it, right? If every single thing gets debated on Twitter, literally every topic on earth, there are extremists, right? On telling why is something good and why is something bad. So as an entrepreneur, when you're like trying to, let's say I want to make gene editing a more natural thing, it's going to involve so many ethical dilemmas and ethical questions. I'd rather not step into that domain, but make something more simplistic, like, hey, let me just build a social network, right? It's much more easier to do stuff in IT, because it's easier to make humans' lives easier using IT than doing innovations in other technologies, right? Like, and that is simply because IT exists, right? Had internet not been there, maybe we wouldn't have had these many opinions.
Actually, opinions would have been heard.
Exactly.
Like, to hell with you. Like,
Yeah.
I'm doing this.
Yeah, people would have just done their stuff and they would have just like moved on, right? But yeah, here we are. I was just telling you about this app, about building this, let's say, the traffic app, right? Like, let's say I built an app which kind of gives me real-time data of how much traffic is there in Bangalore right now, right? Everybody would laud it. They'd be like, hey, that's a fantastic app. I'll be able to like navigate through the city better, and in some sense, we'll be able to distribute the traffic more evenly across the cities. Like, let's say I know going from Yelahanka to Indranagar, the main route has a lot of traffic. I'll probably take an alternate route. And if like 20 people like me take that alternate route, those 20 people will be in a different part of the city. So the traffic is like more evenly distributed across the city, and it's not like concentrated in certain chunks, right? So like everybody takes the hit. So there are people who are like, oh, this is a fantastic app, let's go and build it, right? But then think of this, like if this were like a biotechnology innovation that was going to come through, people will be like, hey, if you do that, a lot of terrorists would have easy access to know where a lot of people are there, and it's easier for them to plant bombs, so don't do it, right? Like, this is a bad thing, don't do it, right? But no one's going to say that for an IT tech app or an IT technological innovation, right? And that's the problem, I guess. Like, why we are not making as many advancements in technology in other sectors of technology.
So I have a question for you. Now, like, since we have read this book, and like, now we have gone, like, we have understood like what going 0 to 1 means, then going from 1 to n. How would you change? Like, I'm sure you have thought of like a bunch of business ideas in your head, or like, you've thought of one like right now. How have you changed your approach to growing an IT business? Or do you think it has changed, or like, what do you agree with, what do you don't? What's your thoughts? Tell me.
Dude, I am definitely going to start small, right? I'm going to that thing that I learned from the book, which is to tap a market that does not exist. I'm going to internalize it, because I feel like that is so against my beliefs. Earlier, when I used to like think of starting a company or like think of an idea, I used to always look at big markets, and I used to be like, okay, what is the problem here? What is a problem in these big markets? Because instinctively you want to build a product that works, right? And the best way to validate that is to see if there's a market for that product that is existing.
Yeah.
Right, and it's very human to do so, but I'm going to try to build products, and I'm going to try to do stuff that potentially does not have a market, or has a very small market and very few competitors, and then I'm going to like expand to adjacent markets, right? Pretty much like your Amazon example that you were giving, right? I think that is definitely like one of the single biggest ways in which I have changed my perspective on how to start a company,
Right. So, I totally agree. And just to, another brilliant example is Zepto. And I went to a talk where this Adit, who's the co-founder, just 19 years old, 6'2" Greek god, he was just standing, he gave this amazing talk. I'm a big fan, okay. And he explained on how he built Zepto, and so this is how he started. So they started in Mumbai, in the local. They picked like one area where they gave all these aunties their phone numbers, and these aunties would be like, "Hey, send me this, send me this, send me this," and they used to really like just bike everywhere. And slowly so once they got like a fit in that, they slowly expanded to other like areas, and people started getting to know about them. And once they got PMF over there, like, which is your product market fit, they were pretty much doing the entire Mumbai under, I'm not sure under the name Zepto, but they were just managing everything. So they were like, okay, let's go for it. So they joined Y Combinator, and they did this thing called hypergrowth. Okay, so you achieve your product market fit. So you start small. Okay, you test the same thing out in multiple mini communities. You bring them all together. That's your PMF, product market fit. And then once you have attained product market fit, you can then scale for hypergrowth. And hypergrowth is important, like than your normal growth. The difference is you put in millions and millions of dollars. Okay, you go like ape shit crazy on hypergrowth. Okay, versus your normal growth where you just hit another milestone. Okay, the reason Zepto had to go through hypergrowth is there were competitors in the market such as Zepto, Swiggy. Okay, although they weren't doing this extreme hyper local 10-minute delivery, they could like easily pivot. And as you can see, like now I think Zomato is doing 10-minute delivery. Even Swiggy has come down to like say that, yeah, in 15 minutes or 10 minutes we can deliver to you. And that was amazing. So like his entire journey over there is like really cool, and they all follow the same principle.
Absolutely. Dude, here's the thing, right? It's if you're going to build a company or a startup, it all boils down to the founder, right? It all boils down to like that visionary or that person who is driving this whole thing. And it's especially if you're going to build something that is 0 to 1 in the market, right? You gotta have a very strong vision of what it is that you want to build. And in the book, I just want to go back to the book for a minute, where he talks about the 4 quadrants of optimism and pessimism, right? So optimism is basically where you think everything good is going to happen, or you believe that things will turn out the way that you in a good way. And then pessimism is the opposite end of the spectrum, where you're just extremely, you have no belief in the future, and then you think that nothing's good is going to come out of the future. And across these two spectrums, he thinks that there are 2 kinds of optimists and pessimists, right? One is the definite optimist and pessimist, and the other is indefinite optimists and pessimists, right? And like it's actually crazy if you think of actual people or like actual circumstances in today's world. You would still see that extremely stark difference between definite optimists and definite pessimists and indefinite optimists and pessimists, right? What I just want to take a minute and try tell the listeners what this actually means, right? So as a definite optimist is someone who has a very, very clear vision, who knows exactly what the future will turn out to be like, right? He has it in his mind. He has a blueprint of what the future should be, and then he puts in all of his effort, time, and resources towards making that future into a reality, right? Like a good example of definite optimism is Satoshi Nakamoto, who is like the incognito founder of Bitcoin. Like no one knows who he is. But then that's such a visionary concept of having a decentralized currency and believing that the world is going to adopt it, right? Like he had a very strong vision, and then he put in all of his resources to build a blockchain, which is Bitcoin, and then voila, here we are. Like the entire world is talking about blockchain and like using the blockchain. Another good example is Apple, right? Like Steve Jobs had this profound vision of like what seamless UI UX is, right? And then he brought it to reality by in the form of iPods and in the form of iPhones and MacBooks, right? So these guys have a very, very definite vision, and they are extremely optimistic. So these guys become the definite optimists, right? Then you have the indefinite optimists. Indefinite optimists are people who don't know what to expect from the future, but then they are just like hopeful that things will turn out in a good way, right? And a great example of that is democracy, right? Like all of us living in a country like India, we're just indefinite optimists. Like we hope that things will turn out to be the way we want it to be, but then we don't know what to expect, right? All we know is something good will come out of it, right? And then you have definite pessimism, right? Definite pessimism is when you absolutely have no hope in the future, and then you just build a plan to make the most out of that pessimistic future. A great example is SBF, right? Like he knew that, oh, okay, I am doomed for now. He developed this hack, and then he extracted all the funds from FTX, and then he escaped, right? So that's a definite pessimism in action,
Yeah.
right? And then you obviously have your indefinite pessimists. That is China. I think China is a great example of indefinite pessimism, wherein they have no idea how bad the future is, but then they just know it is bad, right? Because they are just focusing on 1 to n and they're not doing 0 to 1, right? So I my point being, you got to be a definite optimist to be able to build a company that goes from 0 to 1. You need to have a very clear vision in your head. You need to have like a future that is radically different from what the conventional society thinks, and then you gotta invest all your resources and money into that, and that is when like the world is going to progress from a technological standpoint, right?
I love it. Okay, this especially this winning concept, because I always thought that I always wanted to bring impact. Okay, but like how do you bring impact to like 1.5 billion people? Okay, one, you join politics. It's too shady. That's too risky. I cannot. Okay, then I was thinking, oh, okay, maybe I can become some influencer, like, an actor or something, like, those kind of people. They go on speeches and they, like, they're like, oh, we got to do an impact, Leonardo DiCaprio style. Okay, like, we got to care about the environment, those kind of things. Or, so then we got exposed to all these apps. And with all these apps and all these companies coming up, you suddenly started seeing people's behavior change. Where once my parents would be like, online, what is that? Online shopping, no, 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 you'll get fake shit, you'll get scammed. And now every single transaction is happening online. Every single, like, oh, I'll just check on Amazon. Okay, my dad looked at an Instagram ad and bought a shoe. That wouldn't have happened. I still haven't done that. I still think, oh, maybe there's some scam or some bullshit, or okay, but the behaviors of people have changed. So you can like they have basically used this technology that they have created, use these apps, use these products that they have built, and created their own new world. Nobody
Yeah.
imagined 10 years ago that the world would be like this.
Yeah.
Everyone thought, yeah, cool. Who would have thought, like, now there's a platform where your everyday person can sell their pictures for like naked pictures online for like $499 in America. Your OnlyFans, or yours. Obviously I could have chosen like a plethora of examples, but this is the one that is the most wildest to me. Okay, where like now, like, many of the youth, their first this thing is like, yeah, I have an OnlyFans account.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a complete behavior change. So
Absolutely, dude. That is so. It's so profound. Like being a definite optimist is the way out. That is how you're going to make a future, and that's how That's the winning formula to make like a multi-billion-dollar company or like a unicorn startup, right? Like, in today, of course, there are like it's not the hard and fast rule, but then every single company that has become a multi-billion-dollar company has this formula, right?
And another big issue that we have is reality sets in very early for people. So it's who lasts the longest as a definite optimist.
Yeah.
That is a big hurdle.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're not surrounded by people who support your idea, who even like think that it's possible. Like, okay, like imagine we just spoke last week about Mr. Beast, right? The episode came out. He was in a small town where nobody even knew what the hell YouTube was. YouTuber wasn't even a career, and he dedicated a decade of earning zero money His entire youth, he didn't go to school. He failed out of like college to just YouTube. And well, he was a definite optimist.
Yahoo offered to buy Facebook in 2006. I think in the book he talks about this. So they offered to buy Facebook for $1 billion. Okay,
I
Yahoo.
Google.
No, it was Yahoo who offered to
Oh.
buy Facebook for $1 billion. But then Zuckerberg walks into the meeting and he's like, guys, this is just a formality. This is not happening. We're not going to sell this product. And then, like, fast forward 10 years later, Facebook is like, Mark Zuckerberg is worth $44 billion. Facebook is like hundreds of billions of dollars.
Yeah.
I don't know if it hit $1 trillion cap, but then it's definitely worth hundreds of billions of dollars, right? So it's about a vision that he had. He knew that he could radicalize the future in a certain way. He knew that he could transform it for good in a certain way, and then he carried that vision with him and he took it to the finish line, right? And yeah, this is the winning formula, and it's simple, but like you said, it's about the one who lasts the longest, right? You gotta take all the hits and you gotta take all the criticism and like all the negativity it comes
And
with it.
still be an optimistic fool out there. Yeah. I love it. Also, just talk about the laughing stock Yahoo. Okay, the reason I say this is because Larry Page and Sergey Brin, were selling Google to Yahoo for $1 million, and Yahoo
Holy
refused them.
Holy shit.
So I don't know what went wrong with Yahoo, but they were clearly not optimistic about the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other very interesting thing about startups is that product design and like design matters the most, right? As opposed to Darwinism. What I mean by that is, conventionally a lot of people tell that, hey, when you're starting up a company, you gotta listen to your to the feedback that you get from your
Right.
users. You gotta be open to pivot if something is not working out. You have to make it. You have to be open to like grow in various shapes and forms in different colors, right? Like if and that is like the conventional norm that exists in the startup ecosystem, and that is Darwinism, right? Like basically how life works. Life works by doing by putting a lot of mutations in like a bunch of species, and then the ones that survive make it through the next step of evolution, and then it progresses. There is no definite way that life evolves. It just tries out like 50 different things, and whatever works sticks, right? But then what this book tries to convey is that product design and like your definite optimism should drive the company, right? And this is when startups disrupt their market, and this is when brilliant ideas and brilliant products come through, right? Again, Apple is like a phenomenal example for this. There's this very interesting stat. I think this was back in 2000, I'd like to say 10, 11. Microsoft and Google were competing as to who makes the world's best smartphones. And they had their whole Android technology, and they had Microsoft had their whole, what is that, Windows OS for the
Windows
phone
or something.
Yeah. So in 2010, Microsoft and Google, each of them had a greater market cap in this OS ecosystem than Apple did for mobile phones. 3 years later, Apple had a market cap greater than the sum of Microsoft and Google in the OS ecosystem.
Yeah.
It's all about focusing on the design and doing what you believe is the right thing for the world, right? And that is what will transform the future, and that is what will drive that's like a key ingredient in these startups that are going from 0 to 1, and that's super important for startups if they want to disrupt a particular space.
Right. And Peter Thiel goes very deep into this whole competition. Okay, like you focus too much in competition, and you like end up losing out the bigger picture, and that is a very big thing for like a founder, because you just can't keep like competing. Like as you said, like Apple just came for the win. There's a classic F1 thing that happened this year itself. Like I think it was Max and Max and Leclerc fighting, and then down comes Hamilton.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm gonna put this video up. Okay, perfect.
Perez squeezed past, they're going wheel to wheel towards Vale now. Who's going to be last on the brakes? Leclerc has that inside line. Perez goes off the track, cuts the chicane. Off goes Leclerc, through goes Hamilton. Unbelievable stuff coming out of the final corner. Perez and Leclerc going for it. Hamilton says thank you very much. Another thing opens up for him.
Dude, so there's this other interesting thing about Peter Thiel, right? Like, I don't know if it's luck or if it's you have to be fortunate for this to for something like this to happen. But you know, his initial cohort of PayPal had such brilliant people. The people who came after they sold PayPal, each one of these guys who were there in the initial, like the core team of PayPal, went on to become multi-billionaires. One of the guys who quit founded YouTube. The other guy who quit founded LinkedIn. Of course, you had Elon Musk, who founded Tesla and SpaceX. Like, what a winning formula! What a team to be in. This is like your dream team. This is like, you know, your Jordan, LeBron, Kobe, and like your Steph Curry. All of them in like just
Everyone in
one
one team.
team. And man, like, I don't know, and that you they rub off so well. And like, Peter Thiel has invested in LinkedIn, he has invested in SpaceX, and vice versa, right? Like, of course, they had like it was like a $2 billion exit that they had with PayPal. Everybody instantly became like ultra rich, and then they just kept helping each other. And you know, in fact, there was this one interview of Peter Thiel I was watching. He's like, I will never bet against Elon Musk. I'm never shorting Elon Musk. Anything, if he says I'm going to go to Mars, I'm going to invest, because I know he is someone who will make it work, right? He is a definite optimist. He believes in design over Darwinism, and he is someone who's going to, you know, do what he says and put all of his resources into it. So I'm never going to short against him.
Jesus. I would have loved to been like a fly on the wall during the PayPal days,
Swear,
you know,
man.
just to see, because and Peter Thiel mentioned this as well, like X.com and PayPal were going head to head, okay, and they were like, you know, they were like competing, you know, they had the exact same features and everything, but they were also worried about the financial like crisis that were coming, and they were like, you know what, instead of fighting and see who comes, let's merge instead. Okay,
Yeah.
and
build a
they had-
monopoly.
and build a monopoly, yeah. Competition, so monopoly over competition.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and you know, ego is a big play here. So just imagine these two hyper active men, okay, who are building these billion-dollar companies to say, you know what, okay, this is for the greater good for both of us.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Okay, unlike maybe your Travis Kalanick from Uber, who has like, you know, who had this reputation of you know, the ego and everything. He's like, no, I won't do this. He was just so harsh, and that eventually led to his own personal demise.
You're right.
Okay. Peter Thiel also gave this framework for creating monopolies or characteristics of monopolies. Okay, these are the four. You need proprietary tech, okay, network effects, okay, economies of scale, and branding. Okay, and I think we have covered all of this. Economics of scale is basically your price arbitration, right? If I'm not
Yeah.
wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah.
about basically economies of scale. Is the more you grow, like your economy should be able to support that scale of growth, right? So if you're building a product that is worth like $1 million to make one unit of it, the economies of scale won't work there, right? Because to build 1 million products of like that one unit, you will require like a lot of money. However, if it costs like $1 to make a product, then like you figured out the economies of scale.
Yeah, yeah, and and this seems to be working now. I'm also thinking, how do I create a monopoly? You know, what is something that's not being built? I'm thinking along those lines instead of like, you know, following you know. There was this rule that I started embodying like last couple months: be second first. And it's a very very famous rule in startups, which
Yeah.
is you know, the first company that goes in has to like fight regulations and you know, has all these technological hurdles, and because they're going in a complete untapped market, so they're fighting against the forces, and versus the second company that just like pretty much copies it and does it better, actually eventually wins. So the case study is your Uber versus Lyft. So Uber was fighting the taxi empire, which is a very tough empire to break into, and they literally went city to city. They were doing illegal stuff and a bunch of things. Versus once everything was regulated, Lyft just came in and said thank you so much.
Yeah.
Let's go.
It's the last mover's advantage.
Last mover's advantage. Yeah, you mentioned.
Yeah. Dude, so the other thing that I've been thinking of is from in the startups perspective, 0 to 1 is fantastic, right? I'm just so motivated to start a company and then just do something, right? Just start small but do it. But then can you take this concept of going from 0 to 1 outside the bubble of startup and maybe apply it in your own life, right? As in, try to go 0 to 1 every day, right? Learn something new, break the barrier that you always build for yourself, that hey, I can't do this. In life, a great example, I am a great example of doing 1 to N. I have a corporate job. Every day in, day out, I do pretty much the same thing. My learning curve, my delta learning in the last 2 months is probably 0, right? I have literally learned nothing in the last 2 months, right? That is going from 1 to N. It is very comfortable. I have a good pay, and I have great bunch of colleagues, and it's all very comfortable. But then I'm not doing anything. I'm not adding any value to myself in this case, right? Because I'm applying to my life. So what if I apply 0 to 1 in my day-to-day activities and in my life? What if I learn something new every day? For example, reading a book once a month. For example, talking about doing this podcast. Right, we learn so much as a consequence of just preparing for this to have a session, right? We are learning so many new things as a consequence of this, right? And that is going from 0 to 1, right? And yeah, I really think that this can be taken outside the context of startups and applied in your day-to-day activities, and in building new habits and going from 0 to 1 in every small thing that you do, and that adds so much value to your life.
I will say the quote again. Brilliant thinking is rare, but courage is in even shorter supply than genius. Okay, it's exactly what you said. Okay, you can be doing a job that only certain amount of smart people get to do, but it's a repetitive job. You're not doing enough. Okay, and if you want to build a startup, if you want to impact people, which is being more than yourself, okay, you need courage, okay, which is even shorter than genius. And so with startups, this is what I've learned, okay, being in the startup industry for a year and a half, 2 years actually now, next month, end of next month. So
time flies.
Yeah, hell, yeah. Where I was just an intern, thinking wow, startups. Okay, the curve has been crazy. The learning curve in terms of what I can achieve. Okay, and this is what I've learned. Okay, startups, when VCs invest in startups, they expect you to fail. Okay, they if they're investing in 50 companies, they expect maybe 5 to work. So why not go for it, right? But VCs also say this. They're like, okay, this person we invested in, he has grown the company from 0 to maybe 0.75. He couldn't attain that 1, it's cool, but he has got till there, but he has learned the lesson. Okay, so they actually reinvest in the same founders, because they know they'll do better the next time, because they have learned, because they are constantly trying and failing. Okay, so which is why I love this industry, where they reward your failures, because they're like, okay, you can fail, but as long as you pick your shit up fast, go for it again. Okay, it's all good. We'll support you. Travis Kalanick, his third startup. Okay, not everyone can be like Mark, but just go 0 to whatever billions of dollars of okay, but yeah, you understand what I mean, right? It all depends on starting. That you need to put your foot in. You need to dabble. You need to take that risk. And if you can, like, what happens when you get older, and you may think, oh, what if I don't get married? Like, what if I like, I'll be by myself. I can take this risk. No, man. Okay, I'm telling you, pre 25, you can do whatever. Like, just do whatever you want. Okay, 25 to 27, just take that jump, because come 27, 28, you'll be like, oh, the responsibility clock starts coming. Okay, your time reduces. I was in a talk with Rajesh Srivastava from Urban Ladder. Okay, he was the CEO, co-founder and CEO of Urban Ladder. He sold the company to, I think, Reliance acquired them, and now he's a VC in Antler. Okay, and he was telling, I started my startup 15 days before my newborn baby. That's outrageous. Okay, and yeah, and he says he regrets it because like he wasn't able to give, like, and he had a hard time like managing both, because he had a newborn baby, he had a wife, he had a family, and he was starting a new business. So it's very tough to like dabble with those. But say, I would say, if I have tried like maybe I had two failed startups, and I'm starting my third one, and I have this, like, I've gotten a bit older, I have all these other responsibilities, it'll be much easier for me because I've already experienced that. I've already done 0 to 0.5, 0 to 7.5, I mean 0.75. It you got to try, you got to absolutely try. And which is why like the energy in Bangalore is eccentric, because everyone is doing something or the other. You enter WeWork, everyone's like, okay, yeah, I'm building this, I'm building that, I'm building this, I'm building that. Sure, many of them could be the horizontal process. Yeah, one to ends, the horizontal process, progress, sorry. But every once in a while you meet someone who is doing a vertical progress, and it's crazy, like what's out there now.
Yeah. Dude, I just loved this book. I was so inspired by the end of it, and so motivated. I'd rather say that's like a more befitting word, to just go for it and like do some. So that I'm working on a couple of products myself, right? One of them is that news aggregator. Funnily enough, when Anish, you and I had been to Indranagar the last weekend, or like a couple of weeks ago. You remember, like, we had such a hard time finding a place that is lit and that is happening, right? And we had to rely on our gut instincts, and we had to rely on, something that we had known from the past. We had to rely on each other's knowledge of like which is a good place. And then we ended up going to like the shittiest place of all, right? What
Sorry,
if?
bro.
No, but here's the thing, right? Like, what I learned from that was, what if there was a platform to wherein you could aggregate all this information real time and keep it, right? Like, and build like something called, I'm working on building the product. It's called Pub Crawl, right? Wherein you'll basically be able to see real time what is going on, like what kind of music people are playing, and what kind of what's the kind of crowd that's there, and all that information will be available on that app, right? All you need to do is go and check it, and then if that's where you want to go, that's where you want to go, right? So I'm just so pumped right now after reading the book, and I'm just like, okay, I'm going to start small. I'm going to build a very, very basic framework. I'm going to build something that is extremely primitive, but I'm going to build it and like release it and get the market validation and then expand,
Right. I think a couple weeks ago off camera, we were kind of like, I was telling you like how I would approach your thing, and this is exactly what I was telling you, like, just get that it's called something minimum viable product, MVP. Just as long as it does the core North Star thing that you're asking for, it doesn't matter how it looks, just put it out there, get your first set of customers, first set of people that are using that app, and try and see, and then build whatever else, all the features and everything in the site. Like, people will just, okay, if we, like that's how you like build a business. And I'm just so thankful and grateful that I went through this journey in a couple of startups before. And I don't know if you know this, but the first company that I was working for actually decided to pivot. Okay. and I was part of that pivotal process. Like, and I got to, like, I was like in touch with the founders on a daily basis. So I understood what goes on behind the scenes of, like, pivoting into a new market in a completely different idea altogether. Okay, completely different market altogether. So uh, I was like, okay. So I saw the first version of the product. I was like, okay, this is cool. You get a few people from here, you get a few people from here, you put them together, and you see what's working, what's not, and then you build on top of it. Okay, so it's a great journey to be in. It's a very exciting space to be in right now.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And this book kind of just reinforces all of that and gives you like a new perspective on how to look at things critically.
Right.
I definitely recommend this book to people. I would, yeah, thumbs up on that.
Thumbs up.
What I've been doing is I've picked up audiobooks, right? So I think that's a great way to read books. If you don't, I am someone who cannot sit and like give all my attention towards reading a book. I'd rather listen to the same audiobook 2 or 3 times than read a book, and it's so much more easier, and it's kind of changed my life. So yeah, like if y'all don't want to read the book, at least try getting your hands on the audiobook, and try to like give it a shot. It's definitely gonna help you look at things differently.
Like, this book has helped me a lot. Like, it's changed my perspective. But I would definitely read this book. Maybe right now I would read it again in July or something. Okay, but at least once a year I would definitely read this, because the more information that I am getting, the more, like, okay, so we have taken this takeaways now, we're going to apply it. Okay, and then let's get back to this book, because what we'll I think perceive out of it will be completely different. And this is, like, definitely one of those kind of books that I know the kind of perceived value that I'll get late 6 months down the line, or like a year down the line, will be completely different. And maybe I'll completely understand what, like, Peter Thiel is trying to say throughout this entire thing. And just a little shout out as to how this book came to be, with the co-author Blake Masters. Okay, Blake Masters was a student, a computer science student, where Peter Thiel came to give a talk. And Peter Thiel did these 10 classes, 10, 11 classes, or whatever. And Blake Masters, like, he took notes like every other student, but he took such detailed notes and he put it up online, and his notes became so viral, okay, that Peter Thiel reached out to him and said, hey, let's go out on this book. And now Blake Masters has gone on to, head the fund that Peter Thiel is doing. And if I'm not wrong, yeah, he is also a politician now. So, like, yeah, Peter Thiel has, like, completely groomed him, and I think he's going up. He's standing for something soon.